Hello and welcome to this workshop from Cancer Care Parcel. Today we're considering the situation of being a carer for someone with cancer when the person you're caring for is your own child. It's more than appointments and treatments. It's about staying connected, calm and present for your whole family. We're joined by Dr. Blanka Kellermayer, a neuroscientist and parenting coach based in Oxfordshire in the UK, where she also works in ADHD and neurodiversity support in homes and schools. We'll be exploring practical tools rooted in brain science and compassion to support your child's emotional well-being, to balance sibling dynamics, all without the pressure to fix everything. We've titled it Still a Parent, Still Their Safe Place. Blanka, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Let me just share my screen so you can see my slides. Yes, can everyone see my slides?
We can't at the moment, no.
No? Oh. How about now?
Oh, still seeing you.
I can see them.
Is it just me that can't see the slides?
Can anybody else see the slides?
The wonders of modern technology.
Sorry, Dr. Shah, did you say that you saw my slides? You can see them?
I see them.
Okay. Can I start then? Okay, I'll get started. Hopefully you get started, Jonathan.
Yes, I think if Shara can see them, it's obviously just me that can't, so do go ahead.
Okay.
Shara.
All right. I'll get started then. Okay. So when your child has cancer, parenting doesn't stop, but it does change. It does become a lot about appointments, medications, and the endless waiting rooms. Yet your child still needs you, their safe place. So that's what we'll talk about today. How to stay that safe place even when everything feels uncertain. So hello everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm truly honored to be part of this Cancer Care Parcel event, and I want to thank Dr. Shara Cohen for inviting me here to be here with you. What you do every single day, showing up for your children, yourselves, your families, is truly extraordinary. I know that this space is full of people who have faced or are still facing some of life's hardest moments. So before I begin, I want to say that I haven't personally experienced what you're going through right now. I can only imagine how heavy and uncertain this journey can be. The appointments, the waiting, the fear, the exhaustion that never seems to really lift. So my background is in neuroscience and peaceful parenting. I work with families navigating stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and big emotions in both children and their parents. And while your circumstances are quite unique, what I've found is that the same understanding of how the brain works and what helps the brain feel safe still holds true in this case too. So my goal today isn't to tell you what to do or correct you. There's absolutely no judgment here. My aim is to share some gentle, simple, science-backed tools that might help you and your child feel a little more steady, a little more connected, and a little less alone, even when things feel out of control. And this isn't about doing more. I know you probably can't even think of that right now. It's more about noticing those small moments of calm, those moments that remind your child that you're still their safe place. So before we dive in, I just wanted to take a quick moment to ground ourselves and fully arrive to this session. So I would like to invite all of you, if you are comfortable, you can close your eyes or just soften your gaze and take a slow breath in and let it go. Again, inhale and exhale. One more time, inhale and exhale. And while you slowly keep breathing, I'd like you to notice the furthest sound that you can hear that's outside of the room you're in. And now take a moment to listen to your own breathing. That's all you need to do now. You're here, you're safe. Okay. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and we'll begin. Okay, so here's what we'll cover today. We'll take a look at how stress shapes the brain and the body. Then we'll look at ways to stay connected in everyday moments, even when things feel uncertain. Next, we'll move on to co-regulation and how it helps us to stay calm and safe. Then I'll touch a little bit on siblings, how we can show up with fairness rather than aiming for equality. And finally, I will talk about ways we can validate everyone's emotions, including our own. Okay, so first, let's take a look at how stress affects the brain. And in order to understand this, it helps us to know a little bit about how the brain works. So the brain is made up of three main regions. And these regions develop from the bottom up. So at the base of the brain, you have the brainstem that connects to the spinal cord. And the brainstem is basically our body's, the brain's autopilot. So this is what controls all of our bodily functions, from breathing to our heart rate. And this, all the things that happen without our conscious awareness. Next region is the limbic system, which is also referred to as the emotion center. And you may have heard about the amygdala. That's what sits in this limbic system, in the emotion center. And basically, the main role of the limbic system is to process our emotions, to attach feelings to memories, and also to trigger the body's stress alarm, the fight, flight, or freeze that some of you may have heard of when it senses danger. So these two brain regions are often referred to as the more primitive brain areas, and the most highly evolved brain region is called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is also referred to as the thinking brain. This is what helps us plan, problem solve, and also it regulates our emotions as well. So all of these brain regions are connected to each other. However, they do not mature at the same pace, and the connections also take time to develop. As I mentioned earlier, the brain develops from the bottom up, which means that our prefrontal cortex actually continues to develop well into our mid-20s. And this means that the parts of the brain that are responsible for emotion are much more highly developed in younger children before the higher thinking part, the rational part of the brain, is there to control those emotions. So that's why kids have really big emotions and they don't have the capacity to manage them. So they're not trying to be disobedient. They're not trying to be defiant. It's basically development. And this is actually true for us adults too, because when we're stressed or under pressure, our emotional brain can easily take over control. So let's take a look at why this happens. So when we or our children are stressed, the brain changes how it works. The lower parts of the brain, the brainstem and the amygdala, take control. And these are the parts of the brain that keep us safe. So they trigger what we call the fight, flight, or freeze response. And the prefrontal cortex, the most highly developed brain region, the thinking brain, it helps us to reason, plan, and stay calm. So when stress hits, we don't need that brain region to be active. It actually goes offline. So imagine that you're walking home from work and suddenly a big, hungry, fierce tiger jumps out in front of you. So you don't really want your brain calmly weighing up pros and cons and thinking about what's the best way to avoid this danger in that moment, right? You need to act fast. You don't have time to think about other things. So that's why the lower brain regions take control. They activate the stress response. You need to run, you need to fight the tiger, or you need to drop to the ground and play dead. So that's exactly what the lower brain regions do. They take charge in order to keep you safe. And I really love this, this simple hand model from Dr. Dan Siegel, which explains this quite easily. So if you lift, you can do this, play along with me. So imagine, and sorry, excuse my ugly plaster in there. So if you tuck your thumb into the middle of your palm, this would be your emotion center, your amygdala in here. The brainstem is here at the base of your palm. And this connects to the spinal cord, which is the elongation of your arm. And then your fingers wrap around the emotion center, wrap around your thumb. So this represents the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex. So when we are calm, this is what it looks like. The prefrontal cortex is engaged, it's wrapping around the emotion center, it's in control. When we are stressed, though, we flip our lid. So the prefrontal cortex goes offline, revealing the emotion center below it and the brainstem, which are in control. So I really like this. You can teach it to your children as well. And yeah, so Dan Siegel calls this the upstairs and the downstairs brain. So the upstairs brain being the prefrontal cortex and the lower regions, the downstairs brain. Okay, so when the stress, or let's say the tiger is gone, we manage to get to safety, then what happens is that the prefrontal cortex re-engages and the balance returns. So when your child is upset or scared, this is exactly what happens. They flip their lid. And when we're in this state, we cannot access our thinking brain. We cannot reason. There's no logic. There's no rational thought when we're in this flipped state. So that's why we first need to re-engage the prefrontal cortex in order to move on and talk about what might have happened. Okay, so, and what happens is, right, it activates the fight, flight, freeze response, which is our built-in survival mechanism. And this, the main role of this system is to mobilize the brain and the body so we can escape the danger. And the reason it's called the fight, flight, freeze, and I've added, there's a fourth response called fawn, is because there are 4 different ways that we can respond in danger. So in fight, that's when we stand our ground or push back. You might see anger, you might see yelling and hitting. That's the body trying to overcome or eliminate the threat. In flight mode, flight is all about getting away. It's avoidance, it's hiding, it's running off, getting away from the threat. Freeze happens when neither fighting or running off feel possible. And that's when the body shuts down and tries to avoid the harm or detection. And fawn is not super relevant in our case. That's more of a response for those who have experienced abuse. So this is when people become overly compliant, trying to please their abuser in order to minimize the threat. All right, so that's what happens. Those are the main reasons. The stress response activates, the fight, flight, freeze activates, and these are automatic behaviors. We don't choose them. They come from the survival brain while the thinking brain is offline. And it's not just the brain that changes. We also it's also accompanied by changes in the body. So our heart rate increases, we start breathing faster, our muscles tense, our digestion slows down, we get tunnel vision, we have trouble recognizing facial expressions, and we focus on negative memories. And these are all in the process of creating safety, so moving us to a safe place. So once the stressor is gone, once the threat has passed, normally the body then will shift back into a rest and restore state. So the breathing slows down, the heart rate settles, and the whole system resets. That's how balance is restored. But what happens when stress becomes constant? When you keep worrying about the next appointment, the next scan, or, it's just always something to worry about. So the body doesn't have that time to reset, and it stays on alert. So that means that the stress response is helpful in a way because it keeps us safe from danger. But what happens when it gets triggered too often, like when you're dealing with an ill child? So when the brain's alarm system, so this little guy here is the amygdala. And so this is what I've shown you on the previous slides. In the middle of the brain, it is an almond-shaped little structure in the limbic system. So when the amygdala gets activated again and again, it grows stronger, just like a muscle that you would train in the gym. And over time, it starts to sound the alarm, even when there is no danger. So for children and their parents who've been through medical challenges, hospital stays, or constant uncertainty, their nervous system can become extra alert. And brain scans actually show an increase in the volume of people's amygdala who experience this kind of constant stress. And one important thing to know about the amygdala is that it cannot tell the difference between real and perceived threat. It needs the input from the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, in order to shut down the stress response. But as I mentioned, when we flip our lid, when the amygdala takes control, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. So how can we re-engage the prefrontal cortex so it can shut down the amygdala and the stress response? So how do we restore calm? And this starts with connection. So connection doesn't need to be complicated. It's not about having long chats or grand gestures. It's about those small moments that tell your child that I see you, I understand you, and you matter to me, regardless of what might be going on in our lives. So when everything feels unpredictable, medical appointments, hospital stays, sudden changes, a child's sense of safety can be shaken. As can yours too, right? And there is one thing that stays constant though for your child, and that's you, your presence. And the reason that connection is such an amazing tool is because it triggers the release of oxytocin in both yours and your child's brain. And what oxytocin does in the brain is that it calms the amygdala. So it shuts off the stress response. It reminds the brain that I'm safe, I'm not alone. So this is why these small moments of connection matter so much. So even when you can't fix what's happening medically, what's going on, right? You can't fix that. You can still provide them that sense of safety. And it also helps you as well. So if connection helps calm the brain and body, how do we actually build it? Especially in the middle of hospital stays, worry, or exhaustion. So the good news is we don't have to do big things. And connection grows in the small, everyday moments. So let's take a look at a few examples that you can start practicing in your everydays. Number one is let your child feel your delight in them. So when you see them after, a certain separation, just give them a warm smile. Tell them, oh, I've missed you. I'm so happy to see you again. What this tells them is that I matter to you. You matter to me. The next thing is growing what feels good. So if you notice some bravery that your child has expressed, or some kindness that they've expressed, comment on it, praise them for it, and that will help it grow, and they will feel good about themselves as well. Another option here is using their love language. So some of you may have heard about love languages. So if you haven't, I'd encourage you to Google what those are. So we all tend to have a main form of how we receive and how we express love. So we want to match the way our child receives love, so they know that we appreciate them for who they are. And these don't have to be big things, just small gestures. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention here is noticing small moments of joy. So even like small smiles or like short shared laughs, they really help ease that stress that we're both experiencing, and let go and process all those pent-up emotions. So yes, if you can laugh, then please try and laugh as much as you can. Okay, so sometimes though, even though we're trying to connect and we offer connection to our children, they still can't calm down right away. And that's not because they're trying to be defiant, it's just because their body is flooded with all the stress chemicals. So what can we do when that happens? That's when co-regulation comes in. And co-regulation means that our children borrow our own calm to help calm themselves. So self-regulation refers to calming yourself, and co-regulation is using somebody else's calm to calm yourself. And this is what helps the nervous system feel safe enough to settle. So our brains are wired for connection. We have a group of neurons in our brain that are called mirror neurons, and these are constantly screening other people's emotional states. So think of a time that you walked into a room full of people who are laughing and happy. So it immediately puts you at ease as well. And the same thing happens when you see someone sad, right? It affects you. You take on their emotions. So this is what the mirror neurons are doing. And these mirror neurons help children download our emotional regulation by observing us doing it. So this is why self-regulation is very important, because then the children will internalize what we're modeling to them, especially when they feel connected to us. So basically, their brains are mirroring the safety that we are providing to them. Now, we talk about self-regulation, right? So co-regulation starts with self-regulation, basically calming yourself first. So when life feels unpredictable, like during an illness, it's completely normal to feel anxious, exhausted, and on the edge. Self-regulation is not about staying calm all the time. It's more about recognizing your own stress and taking a pause and finding calming strategies that help you in that moment to bring you back into balance. So again, going back to the hand model, of course, we will also experience states of when we are under a big overwhelm, right? And our prefrontal cortex goes offline. But we have a fully developed brain by our mid-20s, which means that our prefrontal cortex can go back online and regulate our emotions. How can we do this? What are ways to do self-regulation when things feel really hard? And even a few deep breaths, even a moment of stillness can help and steady the nervous system. But in the next slide, I'll walk you through a couple of strategies that you might want to try out. So I've talked about pausing and taking a slow breath out. That can really calm our heart rate. And when we calm our heart rate and breathe slowly, that also signals to the brain that the body is safe, the brain can go back into safety as well. We can also drop our shoulders or hug ourselves or unclench our jaws. We carry a lot of tension in our jaws. So give yourself a little massage, move your jaw around. That can also help ease the tension and again, signal to the brain that we're safe. Name what you're feeling. This is really hard. And it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And I really love some grounding exercises. So like holding on to a warm drink, feeling the heat that is radiated from the cup, taking a sip, giving yourself a hug, or stepping outside for a walk. Moving your body really helps shift all of those chemicals, the stress chemicals that are flooding your body. So if you move your body, you can let go of them, you can flush them out of your system. And at the same time, there might be times when everything just feels too much to handle, too uncertain, too exhausting. And the mind is really tricky because then it might say things like, oh, I should be coping better. I should be handling this better. Or things like, oh, I can't do this. And that's where one of my favorite tools comes in, which is taking a self-compassion break. And this is very well studied, and it has huge, huge benefits. So I do encourage you to try this out. So what self-compassion does, it has 3 parts. So part 1 is when you're showing yourself some kindness. So acknowledging the difficulty of the moment, saying things like, this is hard right now. And just sitting with that for a few moments. Then we move on to the second part, which is our shared humanity, acknowledging that we're not failing. It's just, we're just being human. And the third element is bringing in mindfulness, which basically means that you're telling yourself that I can be kind to myself, even when it's hard, even when I feel like I don't deserve it. There's no such thing. You do deserve it. And the reason this is such an important parenting tool is because when we practice self-compassion, we refill our own cups. And this helps us show up for our kids in a much better way. And for those of you who have more than one child, this can feel even more complicated. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to briefly touch on how we can support our other children besides supporting our child who is ill. And I think in this case, we tend to feel that we have to give the same thing. We have to provide the same kind of emotional support and physical support to the child who is not the one who's ill, who's not the one who's receiving all the so-called attention. And what I'd like to tell you is that rather than aiming for fairness, aiming for equality, we should aim for equity. So equity means that we're not giving everyone the same thing, we're giving them what they need. And every child needs something different to feel seen, safe, and loved. So by bringing in equity, bringing in fairness, we're actually meeting their needs and not giving them the same thing. So how can we do that? We want to meet each child where they are. So the focus is on equity over equality. So how can we do this? If it's possible, again, don't put pressure on yourselves, but if possible, spend some one-on-one time with them. And this might be only a few minutes. It might be, sitting down after breakfast for 2 minutes and just giving them a hug, asking them what's going on in their lives. You can also include them and give them like small responsibilities, because then they feel valued, they feel like they're a member of the team, the family team, and then they really grow up and feel pride in what they do. So you can ask them, oh, can you be my helper and unload the dishwasher? Or can you be my helper and take your drink up to your sister's bedroom? Or just the small things that you can engage them, that they feel important, they feel that they're doing something. Next is, and this is really important, we want to be honest with them and provide age-appropriate answers. And I'm sure Dr. Shara might have things like this on the Cancer Care Parcel website, on how to explain things to children so that they understand. Because the reason this is important is we want to have an honest and trustworthy relationship, because that creates a sense of safety as well. So they know what might happen. And even talking about worst case scenarios. Children are very intelligent and they can sense when we're not telling the truth, and that disrupts the connection that we've talked about earlier. So we do want to bring in honesty. And lastly, acknowledging all of the emotions, even if it's anger or jealousy. So all emotions are okay, and we'll move on to this in the next, the last section of my talk. So they're allowed to feel their emotions. They're allowed to feel angry. They're allowed to feel jealous if you're spending more time with their sibling, and that's okay. And their feelings are their responsibilities. It doesn't mean that you're not doing something right as a parent. Okay, so with that, I'd like to move on to the final section of the talk, and this is all about emotions and validating emotions, both of your children and your own as well. So, emotions are constructed by the brain based on past experiences. And basically, the brain scans through our previous experiences and it makes predictions based on those, the current context, and also our learned concepts. And this, cultural differences play into this as well. So kids learn to recognize emotions through language and modeling. And the bigger the emotional vocabulary a person has, the better they'll be able to regulate their emotions. Again, bringing in the flipping the switch lid, right? So if we are able to bring back the prefrontal cortex, bring it back online, we are basically regulating our emotions. And one way to do that is by validating and naming the emotion that we're experiencing. And one important nugget here is that similar sensations in the body can actually mean different emotions. Like, let's say this child on the picture is experiencing a tummy ache, and that might remind them of the time that they went to the cinema and they were super excited, and that's why they had butterflies in their tummy. Or it might remind them of the time that they didn't manage to score in the football game when they were meant to do the penalty shoot. Or it might remind them of different things. So the context gives them meaning. And obviously in this case, the child he might have a tummy bug, or it might be that the food is not to his liking and it's making him feel sick. So that's basically that. What I want to say is that context and our learned experiences really tie into how we build up our emotional awareness. And the most important thing for you to take home from this part is that in order for an emotion to pass, we need to allow ourselves to feel them. So imagine that an emotion is you're going through a tunnel, okay? So first, you don't really want to go in. It's dark, it's cold, it's wet. And especially when you're inside, it feels yucky. It doesn't feel good. You don't want to be in there. But then if you allow yourself to pass through the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, you'll get to the light. Okay? So allow yourselves to feel the emotions, and that's how you're going to process them. Because when we ignore or push down our emotions, they actually don't go away. They get stored. They get stored in our body. And this is where I really like this analogy called the emotional backpack. So this is my mentor's analogy. And then basically imagine that you're wearing an invisible backpack, and all the emotions that you don't have time to process throughout the day, they get shoved into that backpack. So what happens when the backpack gets full? It overflows, right? So what we need to do is to consciously empty the emotional backpack. And there are three main ways to do this. One is tears. So if you or your child are able to cry, a good cry is a very good sense of relief. Laughter, again, laughing together, not just connection, it's also you're processing your emotions. And for children in particular, it's also play. Play helps us process our emotions. If we can role play things that are going on in our lives, that can really help the brain put everything into the right, fit the puzzle pieces into the right brain regions. So basically, if we are consciously aware of these things, then we don't say things like, oh, stop crying, or, crying, especially what I really hate is when boys are told to stop crying and be a big boy. No, we need tears. Tears help us and they're good. And if someone needs to cry, that means that they have some pent-up emotions. And same for us adults too. Like sometimes I intentionally put on a movie that makes me cry. And that helps me release all the pent-up emotions. Okay. And I think this might be the final slide. I just wanted to quickly talk about why sometimes it's hard for us to feel our emotions. And this is really a tricky one because I think like culturally, we're always told not to express our emotions, to keep it together, to keep it cool. So basically that leads us to avoiding our feelings. It leads into fixing behaviors and fixing other people's problems. And it's this sense of, oh, you need to toughen up and keep it together. And the reason for this is also because vulnerability is very hard, especially if we've been raised in an environment where emotions weren't welcomed. And I think it's fair to say that most of us were raised in that kind of environment. And at the same time, we've talked about how the brain works and how the lower brain regions take control when they sense a threat. And that threat can be overwhelm. It can be not the most, common types of what you think as a threat. It's not a tiger, right? And especially in our world today, we don't really come across fierce tigers anymore. But we have lots of stress, and that will flip our lid, and that will make us behave in certain ways. And we need to release all that. We need to release all the emotions. And so that's why I want you to welcome all the emotions, whether they're your own or they're your child's, or the sibling who's not the one who's going through all the treatment. Because when we do that, when we validate all the emotions, that's how we learn emotional intelligence. And it also builds resilience because we know that we can survive hard things. And this validation will also build safety and connection with your child. Yes, so we've come to the end, and I don't have a clock, so I'm hoping I'm still good on time. I just wanted to give you a quick summary because I did cover a lot, and I've been referring quite a bit to the flipping the lid. So I do encourage you to use this and teach your children and even recognize them in your partners, because when we're overwhelmed and tired, we know you might notice that you have less patience with your partner as well. So then we talked about what the fight, flight, freeze responses are. We've touched on what happens when the body and brain don't have time to reset and rebalance. Then the amygdala goes into overdrive. Excuse me. Then we moved on to the strategies. So the first strategy was connection. We talked about connection triggering oxytocin release, and that in return calms the amygdala. I've introduced different ways you can bring in more conscious awareness about connection. Then we talked about co-regulation and how mirror neurons help us co-regulate with a calm person, and how we can bring in more calm and self-regulation. We talked about different ways to do this. And then again, this tool, self-compassion. So if you take away one thing from this talk, please do take the self-compassion break away from this, because this is so important. We also talked about siblings and bringing in more the sense of equity rather than equality, different ways to bring in siblings and meeting them where they are. And then lastly, we talked about emotions, validating emotions, and emptying the emotional backpack through tears, laughter, or play. And lastly, I just wanted to thank you all for being here today, and everybody who's watching the recording, and just to remind you that you are amazing, and that you are your child's safe place. Thank you.
Dr. Blanka, thank you so much for those insights. I have several questions springing to mind. Firstly, if your child is scared or angry, I understood you to say that when a child's emotions are developing and the way they express them are still developing because they're growing. So the most important emotions they're going to get are scared and angry, because that's really all they know. How does a parent acknowledge that without making it even harder?
So are you talking about acknowledging the anger or
Either,
bringing them to calm?
because they won't be able to distinguish between the two, if I understood you correctly. All they will know is something is wrong.
Yeah.
So it would be very easy for a parent to get it wrong and just make it worse.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I think I got it. So in that case, so first you want them to get into a calm state. So before you talk about what emotions there might have been, because yes, as you said, some children will get offended if you, oh, I can see you're very angry right now, or I can tell you're scared. And then with some children that doesn't land very well. Yes. So in that case, you first want to connect with them and co-regulate with them. And sometimes all that takes is just sitting next to them. You don't have to talk. So I would avoid talking, because when they've flipped their lid, there's no ration, there's no reasoning, there's no thinking going on, and nothing's going in, basically. So you want to avoid talking as much as you can. You want to achieve this state again, for them to be calm. And once they are calm, then you can reflect on, oh, what just happened there? And then you can brainstorm together on what triggered those sensations, even both the bodily sensations that they were experiencing. And then that's how then you can reconnect the dots.
Would be very easy, wouldn't it, as a parent, to feel that you have to stay strong all the time?
Oh, yes.
How do you care for your own child emotionally when they're going through that, when you're going through a fair bit of that as well?
Yes. Yes, I mean it is really hard, and you're taking on so much, and that's where self-compassion means so much, and doing things that, I know this sounds like the one thing that you would completely avoid doing when you're in that situation of caring for a child who's not well. You do need to do things that fill your own cup. And this isn't bad. It's not, you do need that, because you will be able to show up better as a parent when your own cup is full. And the self-compassion break is really, if you start practicing, then the brain is, what I love about the brain is that it's plastic. So once you start practicing different things and new concepts, you're forming brain pathways. The same as I was explaining that the amygdala gets stronger if the stress alarm goes off frequently. The same way, if you practice different strategies to calm yourself and bring more compassion into your life, then those will get stronger too. So yes, please try the self-compassion break.
Does that apply also if whatever you try to do seems to make no difference?
What do you mean?
Well, there's a question from one of our viewers. I don't seem to make a difference for my son. Whatever I do, I feel useless. Because it would be very easy for a child going through that to just shut off and not seem to receive anything, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Can the person elaborate on what they mean? I'm not sure I'm getting the.
I think it's probably that they've tried everything they can think of.
Mm-hmm. But with making the child feel better, it's not the treatment, not the like.
I think it's specifically what we've been talking about how to relate to your child.
Okay, so I didn't touch on this today about like the different ages of the children, because that will, depending on how old your child is, I would give specific strategies. And so do we know how old this child is?
We don't.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, I, 10?
Oh, 10, yes.
10. Okay. So with the 10-year-old, by the age of 10, you're starting to form connections between the upstairs and the downstairs brain. So that means that they're starting to have a better access to the thinking brain while their emotional brain is taking over. So you can bring in empathy. That's where I'd start with. So empathize with, I know things feel out of control, and also I feel like we parents, we tend to jump in and try to fix things, and as much as it's a natural tendency for us to do that, and it's the worst thing to see our kids to suffer, sometimes just being a quiet presence in the room while they are processing an emotion, while they're processing something that's going on with the treatment or the medication, just being present is also super helpful and super beneficial.
Now, in my introduction, I said that you also work in ADHD and neurodiversity support. If your child is neurodivergent, that's got to make a difference.
Yes. So neurodivergent and has cancer.
I guess so, yes.
Yes. Or in this case, is the child neurodivergent?
I think that's the point of the question, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Well, yes, definitely, because in neurodivergence, we're also speaking of a differently wired brain. So everything that I've talked about, we have to take with a grain of salt because things are developing at a different pace. And also there are different connections that are stronger in the brain relative to others. So in that case, I think staying curious and trying to accommodate the child's preferences and needs is where I would start with.
And moving on then, possibly the final question. As a parent, it's very easy to lose patience with your child, even if you understand why they're doing what they're doing. If you lose your patience and you say something in frustration or something, is there a way to repair that? Do you have to just start again?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is one of my favorite aspects of what I do, because I think people, when they hear peaceful parenting, they have this idea that a peaceful parent is always calm. And that's not true, because we're all human and we all lose it sometimes. So what we do in that case is acknowledge and apologize. And the reason I love this is that we're at the same time as we're taking responsibility for our own actions and our own emotions, we're also modeling to our children how to do this, how to own up your own stuff when you're doing something that you shouldn't have done. So rather than forcing apologies, let's reflect on our own actions and how we do things, and apologize. Just acknowledge, oh, I've messed up. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better again. And that's it. And then you move on.
It seems to me that a lot of what you've said would apply in any situation when you're a parent dealing with a child. It's just more so in this situation.
Yes, and I think yes, exactly, because when you're dealing with a scenario when there's a child who's ill and there's a lot of uncertainty, it's just natural that the brain will be on high alert. So those connections between the amygdala, the amygdala goes stronger, grows stronger, and it will sound the alarm. So you as a parent will be on high alert. Your child will be on high alert. And it's just a matter of recognizing and being aware of the depth of the situation, because it obviously is a hard time, and just consciously bringing in moments when you are calming, you're calming your body, and then you calm your brain, and then take it step by step.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. I hope that's been useful to you watching. If it's directly affecting you, then I hope you've been given some ideas of ways to deal with it. Our thanks to Dr. Blanka Kellermayer for those insights. Thank you for joining us today. Do browse our YouTube channel for many videos offering insights into different ways of dealing with cancer in the different ways it affects all of us. And visit cancercareparcel.com for resources of all kinds if you have cancer, if you're a carer or a professional. Do join us again next time.